11:22 a.m. Andersen Air Force Base, Yigo, Guam. The northwest end of the island, where the jungle-covered limestone plateau drops toward the Philippine Sea on the west and the Pacific on the east. Temperature 86 degrees Fahrenheit, humidity 91%, a light trade wind from the northeast carrying the smell of warm coral and jet exhaust across the flight line where 4 B-52H Stratofortresses sit in their alert configuration. Engines cold, weapons loaded, cruise within 7 minutes of wheels up. It is a Tuesday. It is a normal Tuesday at Andersen, which means every aircraft is armed, every defensive battery is active, and every watch officer on the island is doing the same thing they do every Tuesday, waiting for the contact that changes everything. Andersen Air Force Base is not merely a runway and a fuel depot in the Western Pacific. It is the western anchor of American strategic power projection across the entire Indo-Pacific region, the base from which B-52s, B-1Bs, and B-2As have conducted continuous bomber presence operations since 2004, delivering a message to every military planner in Beijing, Pyongyang, and Moscow that the American ability to strike anywhere in the Western Pacific from a fixed forward base is real, persistent, and permanent. It houses approximately 5,000 military personnel. Its strategic aircraft carry conventional and nuclear payloads. Its fuel and weapons storage makes it one of the most logistically significant targets in the Pacific Theater. To the Korean People's Army Strategic Rocket Forces, Andersen Air Force Base has been a primary targeting priority for 2 decades. The Hwasong-18, the KN-28. North Korea's first solid-fuel intercontinental ballistic missile, unveiled in a launch test in April 2023, operational capability declared by Kim Jong-un, and a ceremony attended by every senior DPRK military commander available. The Hwasong-18 is significant not merely because it is an ICBM. It is significant because it is a solid-fuel ICBM, a distinction that matters enormously to defensive planners. Previous North Korean ICBMs, the Hwasong-15, the Hwasong-17, used liquid fuel, requiring hours of fueling operations before launch, operations visible to satellite surveillance, providing warning time that allowed defensive systems to alert and prepare. The Hwasong-18 uses solid propellant in a canisterized launch configuration. It can launch from its transporter erector launcher within minutes of the order to fire, without any observable fueling activity, with minimal pre-launch signature. It is designed to shrink the warning window to near zero. The KPA had studied American missile defense architectures for 15 years, and had concluded that the key vulnerability in the American intercept chain was time. Specifically, the time between launch detection and the moment when the ICBM's speed made exoatmospheric intercept geometrically feasible. The Hwasong-18 was engineered to compress that window as tightly as physics allowed. It was not tight enough. At 11:22 a.m. Guam local time, 1:22 a.m. the following day, Korean Standard Time, a single Hwasong-18 ICBM launches from a canisterized TEL vehicle positioned in a tunnel exit point in the mountains of North Pyongan Province, 53 kilometers northwest of Hwasong. The missile's solid fuel first stage ignites with a thrust of approximately 80 tons, driving the 24-meter, 80,000-kilogram missile clear of its launch canister in 1.4 seconds. It climbs vertically for the first 4 seconds before the flight control system tilts it southeast, beginning the trajectory that will carry it over the Yellow Sea, across the East China Sea, over the Ryukyu Islands, and down onto Guam at a terminal velocity exceeding Mach 23. The SBIRS missile warning satellites detect the launch plume within 2 seconds of ignition. The infrared signal from a Hwasong-18 first-stage burn, 80 tons of thrust sustained for 120 seconds, is one of the most powerful infrared events in the observed missile threat environment. The SBIRS processing algorithms classify the launch in 4 seconds. Transmission to the missile warning network, 6 seconds after ignition. The Missile Defense Agency's Command and Control, Battle Management and Communications System, C-2BMC, at Schriever Space Force Base in Colorado, receives the alert at the same moment as in DOPACOM at Camp HM. Smith in Hawaii, the Air Force Global Strike Command at Barksdale, and the Ballistic Missile Defense System Operations Center at Fort Gregg Adams. 8 seconds after the Hwasong-18 left its launcher, every defensive node in the Pacific Missile Defense architecture is processing the threat. The missile is still in its boost phase. It has not yet cleared North Korean airspace. On Guam, the first alert sounds at the Joint Region Marianas headquarters at 11:22 a.m. and 9 seconds. Not a general alarm, a specific tiered missile warning sequence that has been rehearsed on Guam by every military and civilian organization on the island since the 2017 DPRK crisis made the threat tangible. The THAAD Battery at Andersen Air Force Base, Alpha Battery, 94th Army Air and Missile Defense Command, receives the C2BMC track data via the JTAGS, Joint Tactical Ground Station, data link in the same second. The AN/TPY 2X band radar at Andersen, which has been in continuous active search mode since the intelligence elevation 3 days earlier, transitions from surveillance to fire control mode and begins tracking the Hwasong-18 in its boost phase. A radar that can detect a baseball-sized object at 1,000 kilometers has no difficulty tracking a 24-meter ICBM burning solid propellant at an altitude of 60 kilometers. Total warning time from launch to Andersen alert, 9 seconds. The Hwasong-18 is still accelerating through its boost phase. Its designers had hoped to compress the warning window to near zero. They achieved 9 seconds of warning compression compared to their liquid fuel predecessors. Against a defense architecture that had been rehearsing this engagement for 6 years, and that requires less than 90 seconds to generate and execute its first intercept solution, 9 seconds of compression was not strategically meaningful. They made 5 catastrophic mistakes. The first mistake, the single warhead. The Hwasong-18's tested configuration carries a single re-entry vehicle. 1 warhead, 1 aim point, 1 target. The American Ground-based Midcourse Defense System, GMD, at Fort Gregg in Alaska and Vandenberg Space Force Base in California is designed to engage ICBMs in the midcourse phase, above the atmosphere, where the physics of Exoatmospheric Intercept are clean. GMD doctrine allocates multiple ground-based interceptors, GBIs, against each inbound reentry vehicle to achieve a high-confidence probability of intercept. Against a single Hwasong-18 warhead, the GMD Engagement Authority allocated 4 GBEs, 2 from Fort Gregg, 2 from Vandenberg, providing 4 separate intercept opportunities against 1 target. 4 GBEs, 1 warhead. The DPRK planners had not tested their penetration aids against the GBI's Exoatmospheric Intercept Vehicle's seeker performance at the engagement velocities relevant to a Guam-targeted trajectory. They assumed the single warhead would survive to the terminal phase. It would not reach it. The second mistake, the fixed trajectory signature. The Hwasong-18's launch from North Pyongan Province on a trajectory toward Guam follows a specific ballistic arc over the Yellow Sea and East China Sea, an arc that is fully calculable from the launch point and initial trajectory vector observed in the boost phase. Within 40 seconds of launch, the C2 BMC network had computed the Hwasong-18's complete predicted trajectory, apogee altitude, re-entry corridor, and impact point to within 2 kilometers. The defensive engagement planning was complete before the missile cleared Korean airspace. There was no trajectory ambiguity. There was no defensive surprise. The third mistake, the apogee altitude. The Hwasong-18 on a Guam trajectory reaches an apogee of approximately 1,200 kilometers, well above the atmosphere, in the regime where the GBY's Exoatmospheric Intercept Vehicle operates most effectively. The EKV is a kinetic intercept vehicle. It destroys its target not with an explosive warhead, but through the kinetic energy of a hypervelocity collision in near vacuum space. At 1,200 kilometers altitude, there is no atmosphere to create drag, no aerodynamic noise to confuse the seeker, no thermal effects to mask the re-entry vehicle's infrared signature against the cold background of space. The engagement geometry is clean, the physics are favorable, and the EKV's long-wave infrared seeker has an unobstructed view of its target against the black backdrop of space. The fourth mistake, the timing relative to alert status. The KPA Strategic Rocket Forces had chosen 1:22 a.m. Korean Standard Time for the launch, believing that the corresponding daylight hours on Guam and in Hawaii would create personnel availability and readiness conditions more favorable than a midnight local launch. They had not accounted for the fact that Indopacom had placed all Pacific Missile Defense assets at heightened readiness 72 hours earlier following satellite imagery showing the Hwasong-18 TEL repositioning from its garrison position to a forward launch preparation area in North Pyongan Province. The AN/TPY-2 at Andersen had been in fire control search mode, not surveillance mode, for 72 hours. The GMD fire control at Fort Gregg had 4 GBIs on 15-minute ready status rather than the standard 60-minute cycle. The crews were ready. The timing advantage the KPA planners had computed was theoretical. The actual readiness state they were launching against was maximum. The fifth mistake was the one from which no amount of technical sophistication can recover. The belief that a missile defense demonstration against a fixed, announced target in a controlled test environment accurately predicted the performance of the system in a real engagement. The KPA technical staff had studied every publicly available piece of data on GMD test results, including the failures, which they had used to build an intercept probability model that gave them a 30 to 40% chance of the warhead surviving the GMD engagement. Their model was based on older GBI configurations and test geometries that did not reflect the current EKV variant's performance envelope against a threat of the Hwasong-18's specific reentry vehicle characteristics. The actual intercept probability computed by the Missile Defense Agency against the Hwasong-18's specific RV design using classified test data from engagements against representative targets was significantly higher than the KPA model showed. The KPA was not gambling against the odds they thought they were gambling against. They were gambling against odds that made their warhead survival in the midcourse phase extremely unlikely. At 11:26 a.m. and 14 seconds, 4 minutes and 5 seconds after launch, the Hwasong-18's third stage burn completes and the re-entry vehicle separates from the post-boost vehicle. The RV is now in free fall above the atmosphere, arcing toward its apogee at 1,200 kilometers altitude. Its velocity, approximately 6 kilometers per second. Its position, above the East China Sea, tracking southeast toward the Ryukyu Islands. From this point, the re-entry vehicle follows pure ballistic flight. No propulsion, no guidance corrections in the traditional sense. Its trajectory is determined by physics and the initial vector imparted by the boost phase. It will be in free fall for approximately 17 minutes before beginning its atmospheric re-entry. At 11:26 a.m. and 51 seconds, the C-2BMC network transmits the engagement authorization to the GMD Fire Control at Fort Gregg, Alaska. The engagement authority, the two-officer team responsible for authorizing GBI launches, reviews the threat data on their display. Single re-entry vehicle. High-confidence trajectory solution. Predicted impact point. Andersen Air Force Base, Guam. Their authorization takes 4 seconds. Launch authorized. Engage at 11:27 a.m. and 6 seconds, 4 minutes and 57 seconds after the Hwasong-18 launched. The first ground-based interceptor fires from its silo at Fort Gregg, Alaska. The GBI is a 3-stage solid-fuel rocket 19 meters long, lifting a 40-kilogram Exoatmospheric Intercept Vehicle on a trajectory that will intersect the Hwasong-18's re-entry vehicle above the atmosphere at an altitude of approximately 800 kilometers somewhere above the Central Pacific. The GBI's first stage burns for 60 seconds, boosting the stack to an altitude of 100 kilometers. The second stage fires and burns for 40 seconds, climbing to 500 kilometers and beginning the exoatmospheric coast phase. The third stage fires for a final 17 seconds, positioning the EKV within its separation envelope. The EKV separates from the third stage booster at 11:34 a.m. It is now an independent maneuvering vehicle in space, 40 kilograms, roughly the mass of a large suitcase, equipped with 14 divert thrusters, a long-wave infrared seeker, and an intercept assessment system. It begins scanning for the Hwasong-18 re-entry vehicle, which is now descending from apogee on the far side of its arc. The EKV's seeker acquires the RV's infrared signature at 11:37 a.m. and 42 seconds. The RV is visible as a cold, dark object against the infrared background of deep space. It has not yet begun atmospheric re-entry, and is therefore not producing the aerodynamic heat-in signature that makes RVs bright in the IR spectrum during their final descent. The EKV's seeker is specifically designed for this cold body detection scenario. Track acquired. The EKV fires its divert thrusters in a series of precise pulses, adjusting its trajectory to close with the RV's predicted position. The closure rate, approximately 8 kilometers per second. The engagement geometry is computing in real time by both the EKV's onboard guidance processor and by the C2BMC ground network, which is transmitting course correction updates via an uplink that the EKV receives and integrates into its guidance algorithm. At 11:42 a.m. and 17 seconds, 19 minutes and 8 seconds after the Hwasong-18 launched, the first EKV impact occurs at an altitude of approximately 780 kilometers above the Pacific Ocean, roughly equidistant between Japan and Guam. The Hwasong-18 re-entry vehicle, traveling at 5.8 kilometers per second, meets the 40-kilogram EKV, traveling at approximately 3 kilometers per second on an intersecting vector. Combined closing velocity, 8.8 kilometers per second. The kinetic energy released in the impact is equivalent to detonating 30 tons of conventional explosive. The re-entry vehicle, its structure not designed to withstand this kind of impact, disintegrates into thousands of fragments, each one following a ballistic trajectory that carries it deep into the atmosphere where it burns up. The warhead, its structural integrity destroyed by the impact, does not achieve the detonation conditions that its fusing system requires. There is no nuclear event. There is no conventional explosion. There are fragments, cooling and dispersing in the thin air at the edge of space, and then nothing. The second GBI from Fort Gregg, launched 45 seconds after the first as a backup, detects no viable target and receives a stand-down command at 11:43 a.m. The 2GB is from Vandenberg, launched at staggered intervals, receive the engagement assessment, RV neutralized, and are commanded to safe mode. The Hwasong-18's re-entry vehicle no longer exists as an organized structure. It exists as debris, distributed across a debris corridor 400 kilometers long at the edge of space, cooling and fragmenting and burning in the uppermost wisps of the atmosphere. At Andersen Air Force Base on Guam, the missile warning alarm had been sounding for 21 minutes. Personnel are in hardened shelters. The THAAD battery is in full engagement mode. Its AN/TPY-2 tracking the Hwasong-18's trajectory and maintaining a fire control-ready posture against the possibility that the GMD intercept fails. The THAAD fire control officer, watching the engagement assessment data arrive on her display from C2BMC, sees the intercept confirmation at 11:42 a.m. She does not stand down her battery. She maintains full readiness posture until the C2BMC network officially declares the threat neutralized. That declaration arrives at 11:44 a.m. The THAAD battery stands down from engagement mode at 11:44 a.m. The missile warning alarm ceases at 11:45 a.m. Personnel are advised to remain in shelters pending the all clear. Andersen Air Force Base's operational posture transitions from missile warning condition to elevated defense condition. Not to normal, because normal will not resume until the diplomatic and military response chain has run its course. The strike group commander of the USS Carl Vinson, operating 400 miles east of the Philippines with Carrier Strike Group 1, receives the missile warning notification at 11:22 a.m. and the intercept confirmation at 11:43 a.m. He has been at his battle station in Flag Plot since the initial alert. He has already reviewed the pre-built targeting package on his display, the response options prepared by Indopacom for exactly this contingency, updated within the past 72 hours following the initial intelligence warning. At 11:47 a.m., 25 minutes after the Hwasong-18 launched, the National Command Authority authorizes Response Package Pacific Storm. The authorization message reaches the Carl Vinson at 11:47 a.m. and 31 seconds. At 11:48 a.m., the USS Carl Vinson launches the first element of her strike package. 12 F-35C Lightning II aircraft, each carrying 2 GBU-57 class weapons internally, and 2 AIM-120D AMRAAM missiles for self-defense, launch in a 14-minute cycle from the carrier's catapults, climbing northwest at Mach 1.4 under full afterburner, covered by 4 EA-18G Growler electronic attack aircraft whose AN/ALQ-99 jamming pods activate as the strike package crosses into the range of North Korean coastal air defense radar systems. At 11:49 a.m., the USS Bunker Hill, CG-52, the cruiser assigned to Carl Vinson's strike group, opens 20 VLS cells. 20 Tomahawk Block 5 land attack missiles launch in a 24-second ripple, heading northwest at 550 knots toward the Korean Peninsula. USS Chung-hoon fires 16 Tomahawks 18 seconds later. USS Stockdale fires 14 Tomahawks 20 seconds after Chung-hoon. 50 Tomahawks total. 4 target complexes. Target Complex 1, the Hwasong-18 launch facility at Hwasong-18, North Pyongan Province, the tunnel entrance complex from which tonight's missile had been fired. Satellite imagery had confirmed the tunnel exit configuration, the TEL vehicle revetments, the fuel and propellant storage buildings, and the hardened command post that managed launches from this facility. The command post takes the first Block 5 penetrating warhead. The tunnel entrance structure, designed to allow TEL vehicles to exit under cover and then retreat after launch, takes 3 warheads in sequence. The propellant storage building takes 2 warheads with incendiary delay fusing. Target Complex 2. The KPA Strategic Rocket Forces 4th Battalion Headquarters at Kusong, the command element responsible for Hwasong-18 operations in North Pyongan Province. A partially hardened facility with reinforced concrete construction and satellite communications infrastructure identified in imagery over 18 months of persistent collection. 8 Tomahawks. The communications arrays take the first 2 warheads. The main headquarters building takes 4 warheads in timed sequence. The backup command facility takes 2. Target Complex 3. The Hwasong-18 missile storage and maintenance facility at Ryong-nim, assessed in imagery as the depot-level installation where assembled missiles are stored before transfer to operational TEL units. The main storage structure, a large, reinforced warehouse whose dimensions are inconsistent with any civilian function, takes 4 Tomahawk Block 5 penetrating warheads. Secondary detonations as stored solid fuel propellant canisters are compromised confirm that the intelligence community's assessment of this facility's contents was accurate. Target Complex 4. The KPA Air Defense Network covering the North Pyongan Launch Corridor, specifically the 3S-300 equivalent KN-06 surface-to-air missile batteries whose radars had been active during the Hwasong-18 launch sequence, provide an air defense cover for the launch site. Their radar frequencies and antenna positions had been logged by the EA-18G Growlers. 12 Tomahawks, 3 batteries, 4 warheads per battery. The radars go silent one by one as the Tomahawk impacts walk across the battery positions. At 12:09 p.m., the F-35C strike package reaches its release point northwest of the launch site and delivers its precision munitions against 4 additional aim points. The Hwasong-18T EL vehicle that conducted tonight's launch, positively located by post-launch thermal imaging at a dispersal position 14 kilometers northwest of the tunnel exit, plus 3 additional vehicles assessed as operational Hwasong-18 assets at staging positions in the same mountain complex. The F-35C's APG 81A ESA radar and EO/IR targeting system identifies each vehicle despite camouflage netting and tree cover by the residual thermal signature of the recently fired solid fuel motor. All 4 vehicles rendered inoperable. The EA-18G Growlers, maintaining jamming cover throughout the strike package's operation, detect no viable North Korean fighter response during the 62-minute window of the strike operation. KPA Air Force assets that scramble from Uiju Air Base to the south turn back before they enter the strike corridor as the AN/ALQ-99 jamming degrades their data link and radar picture to the point of operational uselessness. By 12:32 p.m., 70 minutes after the Hwasong-18 launched, the Pacific Storm counterstrike is complete. Battle Damage Assessment, compiled by Indopacom at Camp HM, Smith, and distributed at 3 p.m. Hwasong-18 Reentry Vehicle, neutralized at 780 kilometers altitude, 21 minutes after launch by first EKV impact. Warhead achieved no detonation. Hwasong-18 Launch Tunnel Complex, tunnel entrance structure damaged and partially blocked, command post destroyed, propellant storage destroyed with confirmed secondary detonation. KPA Strategic Rocket Forces 4th Battalion Headquarters at Hwasong. Communications destroyed, main structure severely damaged, backup facility non-functional. Ryongnim Missile Storage Facility. Assessed total structural loss, secondary detonations confirm stored missile inventory compromised. 3 KN-06 air defense batteries, all 3 destroyed. 4 Hwasong-18 TEL vehicles, all 4 located and rendered inoperable. Estimated KPA personnel casualties 53 to 81. American losses 0. Andersen Air Force Base 0 damage. 0 personnel casualties on Guam. At 12:47 p.m. at Andersen Air Force Base, the all-clear is issued. Personnel emerge from hardened shelters into the midday heat and humidity. The 4 B-52HS remain on the flight line, armed, engines cold, cruise within 7 minutes of wheels up. The Tha-D battery resumes its standard elevated surveillance posture. The AN/TPY-2 returns to active fire control search mode. The base looks exactly as it looked at 11:21 a.m., 1 minute before the Hwasong-18 launched. The flight line, the hardened aircraft shelters, the fuel depot, the runway oriented northwest to southeast, waiting for the next aircraft. This is what the missile defense architecture was built to achieve, not the spectacle of intercepts at altitude, but the fact that Andersen Air Force Base looks exactly the same at 12:47 p.m. as it did at 11:21 a.m. Aircraft undamaged. Crews uninjured. Mission continuing on schedule. The Hwasong-18 is fragments at the edge of space. Andersen is operational. The Pacific is open. It will stay open.